Hi there, you're on the Forsaken Joe channel, and today's story might just leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about trust. "Why are you silent?" she asked me at dinner. I looked her in the eyes and said, "Because." But the real answer was far darker than just that single word. That night, I could barely lift my fork. The clinking of glasses around us, the laughter from other tables, it all felt like static in the background of a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. She smiled at me, that same smile that used to light me up. But now it felt rehearsed, almost like it wasn't meant for me anymore. It was the kind of smile someone wears when their mind is somewhere else, with someone else. The last 48 hours had torn me apart. I'd stumbled upon something I wish I never saw, a single photograph, hidden deep in her cloud storage, of her sitting on a bed I didn't recognize, wearing clothes I'd never seen, her smile a little too real for my liking. It wasn't proof, not by itself, but I didn't need more. My gut had been screaming for weeks. She looked at me across the table, like she was daring me to say something, and I almost did. I almost flipped that table and asked, "Who is he?" But I couldn't. I couldn't because I wasn't ready for her to tell me the truth. I wasn't ready for the silence that would come after the lies collapsed. And here's the messed up part. I'm not angry. Not really. I'm exhausted. I feel like the guy who keeps patching holes in a sinking ship while the other passenger just stops caring. She thinks I don't know, but I do. And soon, she's going to find out just how much I've learned. The night after that dinner, I sat alone in my car in the driveway for over an hour, just staring at our house. I didn't want to go inside. I didn't want to see her, not because I didn't love her anymore, but because I was afraid of what I might say. I kept hearing her question in my head, "Why are you silent?" And my own pathetic response, "Because." The truth I should have said, "Because I know." Instead of going in, I drove. I don't even know where I was heading at first. I just kept following the empty roads until I parked in front of an old diner at 3 a.m. It was one of those all-night places where the coffee tastes like burnt tar, but it's quiet and nobody asks questions. That's where I started writing everything down. Every sign I'd noticed over the past 2 months, the texts she'd hidden, the sudden excuses, the weird tone in her voice when she answered calls and stepped outside just for some fresh air. By 4 a.m., I had a plan, a real plan, not just the aimless suspicion of a jealous husband, but something concrete. I bought a cheap burner phone the next morning and downloaded a few tracking apps that I'd read about in some shady corners of the internet. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed answers. I needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed her. She said she was going to meet a friend for lunch, some girl from work I've never met. I stayed 3 cars behind her the whole time, my hands shaking on the steering wheel like I was the criminal in all this. I expected her to drive downtown, maybe to some cafe or a shopping center. Instead, she pulled into the parking lot of a hotel. I'll never forget the feeling in my stomach at that moment. It was like everything inside me turned to ice. She didn't see me. I parked far away, but I saw her. I saw her smile when she got out of the car, saw her fix her hair, saw her check her phone with that same glow on her face she used to have when I texted her, and then he showed up. A tall guy with this cocky way of walking, like he knew he was stealing something that didn't belong to him. I didn't confront them. I didn't even get out of the car. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, and I watched them walk inside together. She didn't even look back. I went home that day before she did. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't do anything except sit on the couch and stare at the blank TV screen until she came home hours later, smiling like nothing happened. That's when I realized the worst part. She's good at this. Too good. Now, I'm not just looking for proof. I'm waiting for the perfect moment to make her tell me everything. If you've been following this story, you know things are spiraling quickly. But what happened next took everything to a whole new level of tension and paranoia. The night after I saw her walk into that hotel, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to her in bed, listening to her breathe, wondering if she was dreaming about him. Every time her phone buzzed on the nightstand, my stomach twisted like I was being stabbed. I thought about confronting her right then and there, just waking her up and demanding the truth. But instead, I pretended to be asleep when she quietly picked up her phone, her face glowing in the dark as she typed something she didn't want me to see. That silence between us felt like it was suffocating me. The next morning, I tried something I never thought I'd do. I left a small, obvious clue, something that would make her nervous if she had something to hide. I placed a receipt from a locksmith on the kitchen counter, even though I never actually changed any locks. I just wanted to see her reaction. When she came downstairs, her face went pale for a split second, but she masked it quickly, asking casually, "What's this?" I shrugged, pretending not to care, and said, "Thinking of making some changes. Maybe a new start." Her smile was forced, and I could see her fingers tighten around her coffee mug. That tiny reaction told me everything I needed to know. She was scared I might already know. Later that day, I set another trap. I sent her a random text while she was at the gym and told her I'd accidentally run into someone she knows, just to see how fast she'd respond. She called me instantly, her voice shaky, asking who I saw. I made up a name, some guy from her office, and she gave this awkward laugh before saying she was in the middle of a workout. I could hear traffic in the background, no treadmills, no weights clanking, just the hum of cars passing by. That's when it hit me. I wasn't dealing with a momentary slip-up or some stupid fling. She was living a double life right under my nose, and I had been too blind to see it. I knew I had to find out everything, no matter how much it hurt. I installed a tiny audio recorder in her car, hidden under the passenger seat, and waited like some pathetic detective in my own marriage. That night, while she showered, I listened to the recording. What I heard made my heart stop. It wasn't just him. There was another voice too, another woman. They were talking about me, laughing about me, about how clueless I was. My wife, the woman I trusted more than anyone, was sitting in her car with someone else, mocking me like I was some kind of joke. I didn't even realize my hands were shaking until I dropped the recorder. I felt like my whole body was buzzing with anger, fear, humiliation. All of it mixed together. That night, I sat across from her at dinner, watching her talk about her day as if nothing was wrong, and I smiled. I smiled because I knew something she didn't. I wasn't going to stay silent much longer. If you've made it this far, you probably think the worst has already happened. But trust me, what came next made everything before feel like a warm-up. The morning after I heard that recording, I couldn't even look at her the same way. She came into the kitchen wearing that same robe she always wears, the one I used to think was the definition of comfort and familiarity, and she smiled at me like nothing was wrong. I wanted to scream right in her face that I knew, that I'd heard her mocking me, that I could hear the other guy's voice laughing in the background. But instead, I just said, "Good morning," and drank my coffee like I was made of stone. I spent that entire day crafting my next move. I knew that if I confronted her outright, she'd deny it. She's too smooth, too clever, and honestly, too good at lying. So I decided to make her think she was the one slipping up. I started with subtle changes, acting distracted, leaving the house without explanation. And when she asked where I was going, I just shrugged and said, "Out." I watched her face carefully each time, and I could see her starting to panic. It was like she didn't know whether I was onto her or not. And that uncertainty was my new weapon. The second step of my plan was brutal, but I did it anyway. I went to the hotel she'd visited and managed to convince the front desk to let me know when she checked in. It wasn't hard. All it took was pretending to be her husband worried about his missing wife and flashing my wedding band like some badge of honor I didn't deserve to wear anymore. When I confirmed she was there again, middle of the day, same routine, I didn't confront her. I just took a picture of my car parked in the lot across the street and sent it to her phone. No text, no explanation, just that one photo. 2 minutes later, she called me. Her voice was trembling, and she tried to sound casual, asking where I was, what I was doing. I just said, "Thinking of you," and hung up. That silence on her end told me everything. She knew. She knew I knew. That night, she came home and tried to act normal, but I could see the cracks forming. She cooked dinner, she talked about work, but her hands were shaking as she set the plates down. I didn't eat a single bite. I just stared at her and smiled, the same way she had smiled at me all these weeks while she was living this double life. The crazy part? I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel like I was winning. I felt like I was crumbling inside. I loved her. Even after all this, some pathetic part of me still loved her. But the anger was growing bigger than the love, and I knew something had to give. That night, I told her I was working late the next day. I wasn't. I had something else planned. Something that would either end our marriage or reveal a truth I wasn't ready for. I left a hidden camera running in the living room, disguised in a plant, and I told myself that whatever happened next, I'd finally stop being silent. If you thought the mind games Elliot was playing were intense, wait until you hear what he found when he decided to stop guessing and start recording the truth. The next day, I left the house pretending everything was normal. I kissed her goodbye like I always did, pretending not to notice how stiff her body felt against mine, pretending not to smell that faint, unfamiliar scent on her hair. As soon as I turned the corner, I parked my car down the street and waited. I had placed a hidden camera in the living room, tucked inside one of those decorative plants that she always forgets to water, and my phone was connected to it in real time. I was shaking as I sat there, watching the feed like some kind of deranged detective in my own marriage. At first, nothing happened. She wandered around the kitchen, checking her phone, pacing like she was waiting for something. For a moment, I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was losing my mind and turning into the kind of paranoid husband I never wanted to be. But then, at 11:42 a.m., she opened the front door, and there he was, the same tall guy I'd seen at the hotel. He stepped into my house like he belonged there, like he wasn't trespassing on the life I'd built with her. My blood turned cold. They didn't waste any time talking. He grabbed her hand, and she laughed in a way I hadn't heard in months. Real, full-bodied laughter that I thought was gone forever. Watching them together was like watching my own life get ripped apart in real time. I could have kicked down the door right then. I could have ended it all with a single shout, but I didn't. I needed to see it through, no matter how much it burned. The strangest thing happened next. They weren't just together. They were talking about me. My name kept coming up, and I couldn't hear every word, but I caught pieces of it. He asked her if I suspected anything. She laughed and said, "He's too soft. He won't do anything." That sentence hit me harder than the betrayal itself. Too soft, like I was some joke, like the man who gave her everything was just a shadow she could laugh at. Then something even worse came out of their mouths, something I never expected. They started talking about money, about accounts I didn't even know she had. It wasn't just an affair. There was something bigger going on here, something calculated. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about cheating. This was about destroying me from the inside out. By the time he left, I felt like I was made of ice. I walked back into the house that night and smiled at her like nothing had happened. She cooked dinner, asked about my long day, and I played along. But inside, I was planning something I didn't even know I was capable of. I can't just confront her now. I need to know exactly how deep this goes. Because if I'm right, this isn't just betrayal. It's a setup, and I'm not going to be her victim. If you've been following this nightmare, you know Elliot is in deeper than just a cheating scandal. What I uncovered next made the affair feel like the least of my problems, and I wish I were exaggerating. After hearing them talk about money, I couldn't get it out of my head. It wasn't just casual talk either. The way they said my name, the way they whispered about transfers and moving things around, made my stomach knot. That night, while she was asleep, I went through her things like a thief in my own home. Her purse, her dresser, and finally, her laptop. I expected to find messages or photos, but what I found was far worse. Spreadsheets, accounts I'd never seen, multiple credit cards I didn't recognize. And then I saw my own name listed on a life insurance policy I didn't even remember signing. I sat there in the glow of the screen, my hands trembling, scrolling through transaction after transaction. Thousands of dollars. Withdrawals from our joint account that I never authorized. And here's the part that made my blood freeze. A series of payments to a name I didn't recognize. But when I Googled it, I found out it was the guy I'd seen with her. He wasn't just some random fling. He was tied to her financially. Somehow, I wasn't just being cheated on. I was being bled dry without even knowing it. The next day, I decided I couldn't just sit on this information. I drove to my bank and quietly asked about the accounts in my name. The woman behind the counter looked confused when I brought up one of the accounts. I wasn't listed as an owner. She asked if I was sure about the account number, and when I gave it to her, she hesitated before saying, "That's not your account, sir. It's under a different name." That was the moment I realized just how deep this rabbit hole went. When I came home, she was all smiles, talking about how her day was stressful and how she couldn't wait for our weekend getaway. I nearly laughed in her face. Weekend getaway? We hadn't taken a trip together in over a year. I went along with it, pretending I was excited. But inside, I felt like I was living in a movie where the villain was sleeping right next to me. Later that night, I checked the footage from the camera again, hoping maybe I was wrong about her. Maybe I misheard. But instead of reassurance, I found something worse. This time, it wasn't just him she was talking to. She was on a call with someone else, a man I didn't recognize. And their conversation wasn't about love. It was about me. They talked about my schedule, when I left for work, when I came home. It was like they were planning something. I couldn't make out all the details, but one line from her chilled me to the bone. He won't see it coming. He never does. I barely slept that night. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was living with someone capable of more than just betrayal. I kept replaying the footage in my head, every word, every glance. I started to wonder if I was even safe in my own home. Now I'm at a crossroads. Do I confront her and risk blowing everything up? Or do I keep gathering evidence and find out exactly how deep this nightmare goes? I'm leaning toward the latter, because something tells me this isn't just about an affair anymore. This feels like a trap I've been walking into for months without realizing it, and I need to get out before it's too late. By this point, I wasn't just dealing with a cheating wife. I felt like I'd been dragged into something far bigger, and maybe far more dangerous than I ever imagined. After the discovery of those suspicious accounts and the chilling conversation I overheard, I knew I couldn't just sit around waiting for answers. I needed to find out who this man really was. He wasn't just some fling. He was involved with her finances, with her plans, and apparently with my life in ways I couldn't understand. I spent hours digging through every shred of information I could find about him. His name, as I learned from the payments, was Darren Cole. I didn't recognize the name at first, but when I started searching, I found enough to make my stomach churn. Darren had been arrested twice in the past, one charge for fraud, another for assault. Both cases were mysteriously dropped, which made me wonder just how connected this guy was. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. I found old forum posts mentioning his name linked to scams, money laundering schemes, and people who claimed he disappeared with their savings. And here he was, sitting in my house, drinking my coffee, smiling at my wife like he owned her. It felt like I was standing on a trap door that could open at any second. I couldn't let her know I was on to him. Instead, I played my role, acting like the clueless, quiet husband she thought I was. But behind her back, I started tracking his moves. I installed another hidden camera outside the house, aimed at the driveway, and sure enough, he was coming around even when I wasn't home. Sometimes for just a few minutes, other times for hours. But here's the part that sent me into a tailspin. One afternoon, when I was pretending to be at work, I saw not only Darren, but another man I didn't recognize, walking into my home. My wife greeted them both like they were old friends. I didn't know what to do. Do I call the cops? Do I storm in and demand answers? Number. Something told me this wasn't just about cheating anymore. There was planning involved. Their conversations, the money, the new faces, they weren't just using me emotionally. They were setting something up. That night, I pretended everything was fine. We sat on the couch together, watching TV, her head resting on my shoulder, as if nothing in the world was wrong. Meanwhile, all I could think about was the burner phone I'd hidden in the garage, where I'd been recording every single thing I'd overheard that week. The plan I was forming wasn't just about catching her. It was about surviving whatever this was turning into. The next day I followed Darren. I knew his car by now, a dark blue SUV with a dented bumper. I kept my distance, heart pounding, as he drove across town and parked near a storage facility. He wasn't alone. The second man from my house was there, and they were unloading boxes from his trunk. I couldn't see what was inside, but they carried them like they weighed nothing. I managed to get a few photos from far away, my hands shaking as I snapped each one. I don't know if my wife has any idea how much I know, but something tells me this game is going to come to an end soon. And when it does, it won't just be about her cheating. It'll be about everything they've been hiding from me. This is the final part of Elliot's story, and I promise, it's going to end in a way you won't expect. After weeks of living like a ghost in my own home, recording, tracking, and pretending, I decided it was time to end this nightmare. I gathered everything. The photos of Darren, the footage from the hidden cameras, the recordings of their conversations. I even hired a private investigator for 2 days just to make sure I wasn't missing anything. What he found confirmed my fears, but also gave me hope. Darren wasn't just using my wife. He was scamming her too. He had a history of manipulating women, draining them financially, and then disappearing. I had enough evidence to go to the police. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't confront her at home. I didn't start a screaming match. I walked into the precinct with a folder thick enough to crush the lies we'd been living under. It took a few days, but Darren was picked up for questioning, and the investigation into his scams began immediately. As for my wife, when she realized everything was falling apart, she broke down in tears. For the first time in months, I saw the real Marissa. the scared, broken woman who had been lured into something she didn't fully understand. I won't pretend that what she did didn't hurt me. It did. It shattered me in ways I can't describe. But when I saw her sitting there, shaking, realizing how close she came to losing everything, I knew I had a choice. I could let this destroy me completely, or I could take it as the brutal wake-up call I needed. We've started therapy. She's cut all contact with Darren, and all the accounts he touched have been frozen. It's not an easy road, and I'm not sure where it will lead us, but for the first time in months, I feel like I'm breathing again. I learned something through all of this. Silence is deadly. It eats you alive from the inside. If you feel something is wrong, speak up, act, protect yourself. Because if I had stayed silent for just a little longer, I might not be here telling you this story. So, what about you? Have you ever been in a situation where your gut told you something was off, but you didn't know what to do? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to know if anyone else has faced something like this. And as always, thanks for listening to this story here on Forsaken Joe. If you enjoyed this ride through the chaos of my life, let us know your thoughts below and subscribe for more real stories that will shake you to the core.